In Jerusalem today, the United States sent a clear message about the challenges ahead in Gaza. During his visit to Israel, US Vice President JD Vance said that the task of disarming Hamas while rebuilding Gaza would be, in his words, a tough task ahead. His remarks came as Washington pushes to solidify the next phase of the fragile ceasefire agreement and reassure Israel that America remains fully committed to its security and to Gaza's reconstruction. Standing beside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Vance said, "As the Prime Minister said, these are days of destiny, and we're very excited to sit down and work together on the Gaza peace plan. We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas but rebuild Gaza, to make life better for the people of Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel." The Vice President's comments encapsulate Washington's delicate balancing act, supporting Israel's right to defend itself while pressing for tangible steps toward recovery in Gaza, a territory left devastated by months of bombardment and blockade. His visit marks one of the highest-level US engagements since the ceasefire framework was signed earlier this month. Vance's arrival in Jerusalem follows weeks of diplomatic back and forth between American, Israeli and Arab officials over how to translate a ceasefire into something more durable, a long-term peace that could prevent Gaza from slipping back into chaos. The Biden administration's original proposal envisioned a three-phase process: the full cessation of hostilities, the exchange of hostages and detainees, and a monitored demilitarization of Hamas-controlled areas paired with a massive reconstruction drive led by international partners. Now, with President Trump back in office and JD Vance serving as his vice president, the contours of that plan remain, but the tone has shifted. The Trump-Vance administration is eager to demonstrate strength while emphasizing results. Vance's mission, aides say, is to signal that Washington's promises to rebuild Gaza are not mere words, but they are conditional on the total disarmament of Hamas. Behind the scenes, US envoys are coordinating with Israeli security teams and regional mediators from Egypt and Qatar. They are drawing up mechanisms for weapons collection, border control and humanitarian monitoring. American military engineers are expected to join Israeli and Egyptian counterparts in surveying Gaza's shattered infrastructure, power stations, hospitals and water treatment plants to prioritize early rebuilding projects. Israeli officials greeted Vance's statements with cautious optimism. Netanyahu, who has repeatedly declared that Israel will never allow Hamas to rearm, said the partnership with Washington is critical to guaranteeing that outcome. The Prime Minister described this phase as one of strategic patience, emphasizing that disarmament must be verifiable and irreversible. For Israel, that means maintaining security oversight in Gaza for the foreseeable future, even as Palestinian civil administrators return to manage daily life. The idea is controversial. Many Palestinians view it as an extension of occupation rather than liberation. But for Vance and his team, ensuring Israel's safety while providing hope to Gazans is the core of what they call the Gaza Peace Implementation Plan. The human dimension of that plan is daunting. The United Nations estimates that more than 500,000 Gazans are still displaced, many living in temporary shelters or tents. Hospitals remain understaffed and under-equipped. Aid trucks continue to trickle through border crossings, but fuel shortages persist, and the economy has all but collapsed. In this context, Vance's tough task ahead comment resonates deeply. Disarming a deeply embedded militant organization is one challenge. Rebuilding trust among ordinary Palestinians is another. American officials acknowledge that no sustainable peace can exist without addressing Gaza's humanitarian despair. That is why Vance's delegation includes not just security advisors, but also reconstruction planners and representatives from USAID and the Treasury. Their immediate focus: jump-starting Gaza's basic services, electricity, water, healthcare, and schooling. Billions of dollars in pledges are being discussed with European and Gulf donors. But donors are wary. Many recall how previous aid efforts were derailed by renewed violence or corruption. The Vice President's presence aims to reassure them that this time oversight mechanisms will be stronger and results will be measurable. On the diplomatic front, Vance's trip is also about optics and reassurance. The Trump administration has been accused by critics of favoring Israel too heavily at the expense of Palestinian aspirations. By visiting Jerusalem now, and by explicitly talking about making life better for the people of Gaza, Vance is attempting to show a more pragmatic, outcome-oriented approach. Still, Washington's balancing act is far from easy. Hamas, though militarily weakened, remains politically defiant. Its leaders, now largely operating from exile in Qatar and Lebanon, have rejected any plan that involves international disarmament teams or prolonged Israeli supervision. For them, disarmament is synonymous with surrender. That intransigence threatens to undermine the very peace framework that allowed this ceasefire to take hold. Regional reactions to Vance's visit have been mixed. Egypt and Jordan, both key intermediaries, welcomed his remarks as a sign of renewed American engagement. But Iran and its allies dismissed the initiative as, in Tehran's words, occupation under a new name. Hezbollah, in a statement from Beirut, warned that disarming resistance is not peace, it is submission. Yet, even among skeptics, there is recognition that something must change. Gaza cannot remain a wasteland. The international community, and from the Gulf states to the European Union, is waiting to see whether Washington and Jerusalem can craft a plan that moves beyond military logic to genuine reconstruction. Inside Israel, Vance's speech drew attention not only for its substance, but for its tone. Observers noted that his emphasis on rebuilding was nearly as strong as his emphasis on disarming Hamas, a shift that contrasts with the Trump administration's early rhetoric in previous years. Some analysts see this as an acknowledgement that Israel's long-term security depends on Gaza's stability, not just its demilitarization. Vance, a former Marine and a prominent conservative voice, has built his political brand around disciplined pragmatism. In Jerusalem, that pragmatism was on display. His choice of words, disarm Hamas but rebuild Gaza, distilled the complexity of US policy into a single, memorable phrase. It appealed simultaneously to Israeli security hawks and to humanitarian advocates calling for reconstruction. During private meetings, Vance also discussed the role of regional actors. Sources close to the talks say Egypt is expected to take a leading role in border security, while Saudi Arabia may contribute to funding the reconstruction of major hospitals and housing projects. The European Union, for its part, has proposed deploying a civilian monitoring mission similar to the one it operated in Rafah in the mid-2000s. But implementation will require trust, and that remains in short supply. Palestinian factions remain divided between Hamas loyalists, Islamic Jihad militants, and technocrats aligned with the Palestinian Authority. Many fear that without a unified Palestinian governance structure, any reconstruction effort will stall. American officials have floated the idea of a temporary international trusteeship, but that too faces political resistance. For residents of Gaza, however, these diplomatic abstractions mean little compared to the daily struggle for survival. Families are still searching for missing relatives under the rubble. Farmers are trying to salvage what remains of their olive groves. Teachers, when schools reopen, will be teaching children who have lived through trauma few can imagine. Vance's reference to making life better for the people of Gaza speaks to these realities, but on the ground, Gazans will judge progress not by speeches, but by electricity in their homes, medicine in their clinics, and jobs that restore dignity. The international community knows that rebuilding Gaza's physical infrastructure must go hand in hand with rebuilding its social fabric. As the day ended in Jerusalem, the Vice President's motorcade departed the Prime Minister's office and drove toward the Old City, where he briefly visited the Western Wall. Local media captured images of him placing a note in the cracks of the stone, a symbolic gesture of faith and continuity. Israeli commentators interpreted the moment as an attempt to link spiritual resilience with political determination. The White House later released a statement summarizing the visit. It reaffirmed US commitment to Israel's defense and reiterated that the disarmament of Hamas is non-negotiable. The statement also emphasized that the United States will mobilize global partners to ensure that Gaza's reconstruction serves its people, not its militants. Back in Washington, congressional reactions varied along familiar partisan lines. Supporters of the administration praised Vance's clarity and resolve. Critics warned that disarmament without political reconciliation could sow the seeds of future conflict. Senator Chris Murphy noted that without a credible path to self-governance, rebuilding efforts will fail no matter how much money we pour in. Others urged the White House to keep pressure on Israel to facilitate aid deliveries and to protect civilians during ongoing security operations. For now, though, JD Vance's message stands as both a warning and a promise. A warning that the road ahead is fraught with difficulty, and a promise that the United States will not turn away from the challenge. His phrase, tough task ahead may well define the coming months of diplomacy in the region. The next steps will determine whether this ceasefire evolves into a genuine peace or collapses under the weight of mistrust and revenge. For Gazans, hope lies in tangible progress, cleared debris, reopened schools, functioning hospitals. For Israelis, hope lies in security and the assurance that rockets will no longer fall from the sky. For Washington, success means proving that American diplomacy can still deliver stability in one of the world's most volatile regions. Tonight, as lights flicker back on in parts of Gaza and air raid sirens fall silent in southern Israel, JD Vance's words echo beyond the halls of government, a reminder that peace is never easy, that rebuilding demands courage, and that even in a landscape scarred by war, determination can light the way forward.